Sparring is scary. Whether you train boxing, kickboxing, or MMA, sooner or later to take your skills to the next level, you're gonna need to start sparring. And recently I've had the chance to spar with a couple of former pro MMA fighters, as well as be coached by a professional boxer in both boxing and kickboxing. And so today I wanted to share with you guys what you can expect out of your first couple of sparring sessions, as well as some of the best tips that they gave me so that you guys can perform at your best in your first couple of sparring sessions. And make sure you stick around to the end where I break down some of my first sparring footage so that you guys can learn from my mistakes. So what can you expect from your first sparring sessions? Well, I'm not going to tell you exactly what you're going to feel because everybody's a little bit different, but for the majority of people, and what I certainly felt, was very nervous. And that is a completely natural feeling and a normal feeling because this is not an activity that is completely safe. It's something that's a little bit dangerous, and it's something that is completely unfamiliar to most people. While sparring should be done, especially at first, with a lot of safety protocols and a coach watching you, it is a dangerous situation, and it is something that is not normal for most people. Most people will never spar, they don't have the courage to do it, and it is a very scary feeling. And a good thing to remember is that fear is a prerequisite for courage, and if you do it anyway, you are a courageous person, and honestly, you have more courage than most people to even get in that ring. The second thing that most people notice is a difficulty with range. I certainly felt this horribly in my first couple sparring sessions. It's very difficult to practice being at a perfect range when you're hitting pads or hitting the bag, and even though coaches do footwork and a lot of things like that, sparring is one of the first times you can actually test if you're at a good range. This is why things like play sparring and drilling can really help you before you get into light sparring, but a lot of times you're not going to really have the opportunity to really try to hit somebody who's trying to not get hit. And for that reason, range can feel like a very, very big difficulty. The other reason this is difficult is because normally when you hit a bag or you hit pads, you're probably not worried about being hit. And when you are worried about being hit, you're going to naturally stand a little bit further back than you would when you're not worried about that. And so you're going to probably notice at first that it is very, very common for you to kind of step back or pull away and not want to stand your ground and defend like you're supposed to, even if you consciously know that's what you're supposed to do. And the last two things you'll notice are almost contradictory. First of all, you'll notice that being punched in the face really isn't the end of the world. Being punched in the face sucks, it's painful, but it's really not that bad, especially when you have all this adrenaline flowing. You kind of get amped up from it, and it isn't really like super painful. Obviously, if you're throwing a full force punch trying to knock someone out, that's a little bit of a different story, but especially if you're light sparring with those pulled punches, it's really not the end of the world to get hit by them, and it can be something that really does teach you better habits because you notice where your weaknesses are. And so for that reason, don't be too worried to be hit in the face. However, with that being said, the human body, especially your head, is not meant to be hit at all. And so at first, it's going to feel a little bit like your body's working against you. And so I was jab sparring and I was getting caught with a couple of jabs, and I noticed that my jab back became like really slow. And it wasn't because I didn't know how to throw a jab quick and I didn't know how to relax my shoulder, but it was because my body was like, let's not get hit anymore. And it was tensing up my whole body because it just didn't want to get hit anymore. And it just really sort of worked against me. And even if you heard me say this a million times, it's one of those things that you're going to need to just learn by doing reps. And just don't feel so bad about yourself if you can't move perfectly, because it is completely natural reaction and your body is just uncomfortable. So what are some of the tips that are actually going to help you with your sparring sessions? The first tip I'll say is don't blend your offense and your defense. In almost every other sport in the world, offense and defense have a very clear line between them. If you play basketball, it's very easy to tell if you're playing offense or your defense because your team has the ball or they don't. That's a very clear line. But in boxing, kickboxing, and MMA, that line is very, very subtle, and it can change within seconds, milliseconds even. And for that reason, it's very good to be aware of what you're doing in the moment, because when I first started sparring, and what I've seen a lot of other new people do when they first start to get into a real situation, they block and punch, and they kind of just move in this amalgamation of moves that they know, but they don't know what to do in what situation, and it all becomes a bit of a mess. And recently, after one of my sparring sessions, my boxing coach just basically told me, listen, just be more intentional with each punch. If you're going to try to hit somebody, commit to that, because it's not going to be more dangerous than you half-assing a punch and then also half-assing a block, because then you're going to do both poorly. The second tip is prioritize defense. If you look at all of the guys who have had the longest careers in martial arts, it's typically the guys who are able to prioritize defense. Floyd Mayweather, for example, lost a lot of his knockout power, and at a certain point, he wasn't really able to be the knockout artist that he was early on in his career. And a lot of people never knew that he had a lot of knockouts at one point because he was so good at not getting hit. And this made him able to have a very long career and be one of the best of all time. And it was because he prioritized defense. Now, you and I aren't worried about being the best in the world, but what we can take away from this is that prioritizing defense will allow you to perform better over the long run. Because I did not take this advice at first. And what you'll see in some of the sparring footage that I show you guys later is I don't pull my punches back to my face properly. Why? Because I wasn't thinking defensively. I was so worried about hitting my target that I kind of forgot that I could be hit back and as a result, I got hit back. The third tip, probably the simplest, and that is focus on your breathing. There's a couple of very practical, matter-of-fact reasons that I bring up focusing on your breath, but another big benefit of focusing on your breath and breathing through your nose and breathing slowly is that you're much more calm in this state. Your body wants to amp itself up, and it wants to basically let your nerves and your emotion and your excitement all run wild, and it serves you much better in a boxing or honestly any martial arts scenario to be calm, to be in control of your breath, and to be intentional with your movement. And also very practically, if you bite down on your mouth guard and just breathe through your nose, practically you will have much better oxygen flow and you will have much better endurance. Across the board, it's basically proven that your nose is a much more efficient source of oxygen than breathing through your mouth, and so I promise you, just try to do it. Even if you don't do it perfectly, but just try to, you will have better endurance than if you're mouth breathing the whole time. It's very easy to do that. I still do it sometimes, but nasal breathing is much more effective, and it's something that you should try to learn. And the last very practical reason that it's good to breathe through your nose and breathe slowly is because a lot of times when you get tired, and I've seen this happen to guys in the gym, is your mouth will open up and it's hard to bite down on that mouth guard. And so I've seen as a result of this, people's mouth guard fall out and then they get punched and their teeth get messed up, their gums get messed up, their lip gets all cut. And a lot of guys have had, bloody days at the gym simply because they weren't able to breathe through their nose for that long. And that also, again, makes you tired, which makes you less defensive, which is also a reason you're going to get hit more. And so it's just a very, very good thing to just focus and be able to breathe through your nose. And again, it takes practice. You're not going to do it perfectly the first time, but it is something and a good goal to aim for. All right, welcome to the other side of my dorm room. So I got some footage for you guys from a couple months ago. This is one of the first couple of times I sparred boxing, probably my third time sparring boxing ever. And the previous 2 times were not too close to this, so I was definitely rusty and I hadn't had that much experience. So it's a really good representation of what a first sparring session will look like. First of all, you can see that I'm wearing jiu-jitsu pants because I came straight from practice, so I'm definitely not in the most ready state to spar. I just kind of did it on a whim because I was eager to get into some boxing. And boom, straight out the gate, get caught with a check left hook. Why did this happen? Because I am dropping my hands like crazy. If you look at every punch I throw, it goes to my hip before it comes to my face. That is a huge mistake. That is a very common thing you'll see people do on the pads, but it will absolutely cost you in a sparring setting. I throw my punches from here, they should be coming right back to my face like this, but they're going like this in a big circle, making me way overexposed to being hit back and counter-stricken. Counter-struck. Yeah, if you see that sequence just before this, I threw the 2 and I threw the uppercut. That was honestly the best thing I did this entire sparring session because I was throwing the 1-2 a lot, and what that got him thinking was protect the 1-2, protect the 1-2, and then I mix it up with that uppercut, which is why it almost landed and clipped him on the chin. But again, I was really, really going to that 1-2-3, and the 3 always was going to the body, and that made me very predictable, and especially because I was dropping my hands, it was very easy to read what I was doing. I also know there's a lot of nitpicky things I could say about my form, but if we're going to do that, I'm going to be here literally all day, so I really just want to focus on the major mistakes, the ones that are more relatable to everybody, and not like the little things like right there, dropping my hands for like the millionth time. Again, we're trying to keep it technical here. This is not hard, so if I was going, harder with someone who was a lot better than me, I mean, Rish is a little bit better than me here, but if I was going with someone levels above me, I would be getting hit left and right. So again, the jab is slow. I'm not throwing it nearly as much as I need to. I should be doubling it up, tripling it up if I need to close that distance and also keep Rish at range. Something I'm very bad at is right now I'm the taller guy, I'm the longer guy. But again, I'm not jabbing across that void and I'm letting him come in. If I was jabbing all the time, Rish would not be able to get to me because it's a practical thing that I am just too long for him to, get into my, foot away range or even toe to toe. And it's certainly not inside foot because I'm just too long. But because I'm really not jabbing enough, the range is out of the window. That was a good cross, caught him there. That was pretty good, doubled up the jab. And look, I closed the distance, was able to connect with the 2 a little bit. But that's what I should be doing the entire time, just jabbing. And again, that's way easier said than done now, but your body gets tense and you're going to need to make sure to relax because that's what will happen. You're not going to throw your punches enough. You're not going to be able to close distance, and then you'll get caught with silly stuff because your arms are going down like me. And yeah, that's the round. So as you can see, this is some pretty bad sparring. Definitely not my best performance. I've definitely made a lot of improvements since then. It's very easy to think that you're doing better than you are in sparring. So a couple tips I'll give you, bonus tips. Record your sparring footage if you can, because again, when I got caught with a lot of those punches, I would have thought you were lying to me if you told me my hands were all the way down. But after seeing it, you got to be like, well, shit, I am way out of position. That's not what I need to be doing. And that's also very helpful and a very, good reality check and a little bit humbling, to be honest. But it will help you get better faster because you will be able to objectively see what you need to work on. With that being said, I hope you guys learned something and were a little bit entertained by this video. If you were, please like and subscribe. We're trying to grow this channel like crazy this year. I appreciate all you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.